What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best Self Blueprint. So, those of you who have tuned in before, you already know the mission of this podcast is to bring on people with the knowledge, insights, and/or experiences that hopefully will help you move the dial towards becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that means to you. It's more of an art than a science. But my guest today is someone who I've had a couple conversations with that have left me wanting a lot more conversation. Just a phenomenal guy, fellow ultra runner, fellow podcaster, which we will definitely talk about his podcast. And I can already say you should go check it out. I've been devouring it. Can't get enough. Mr. Justin Peters, how you doing?
Trevor, my man, thanks for having me on the show. This is so much fun. And you always make me want to do the peace sign whenever I see and watch
The
your
peace
videos.
sign, man. Throw it up.
It's so fun. At first, I was like, oh, that's quirky, but I've actually really enjoyed it now that I've watched, I don't know, at least a dozen of your videos as well. So glad to be here.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited to have you. And there's a lot of different things I want to talk about just from little snippets that either, you've talked about with a guest on a podcast or just a little like short monologue you've gone into. But the first one, because I know this is more or less your motivation around your podcast, The Struggle is Real, is it ties to a Tom Bilyeu quote, which I know you and I are mutually excited about that human being. And he says, I don't think it's his quote, but he preaches it all the time, which is, no one will act for the many, but many will act for the one. And your one is your little brother. So what is it about? Is it just like being the big brother, you choose to bear the responsibility of trying to supply him with the tools? Or what is that about your little brother, just as a little brother, that motivates you to continue to do the podcast?
Dude, hat tip to you. A phenomenal opening question and something that's near and dear to my heart. I really enjoy that. It's probably a bit of both on the front that knowing that Tom Bilyeu quote and understanding the concept behind it, I knew I wanted to get really narrow in on one specific person, and no better person than my little brother, somebody that I take a lot of pride in being a mentor and making sure he holds me accountable as much as I hold him accountable to be the person that I say I'm going to be. And yeah, the podcast in general just stemmed out of Sunday conversations with him where we'd go on 2-3 hour tears on the phone together and be talking about all these life things. And you probably heard me say it. Sometimes I had the answers and I could provide the answers because he's 3-4 years younger than I am. And I was just going through that situation. Other times I was struggling along with him, so we could talk it out and share it out. And then I was like, man, I have no idea sometimes. So I would just reach out to other people that I thought might have the answers. And then, of course, that conceptualized into a podcast surrounded by 20 something, life advice, everything from career, health and wellness, life, money, you name it. The things that we wish we would have learned in school are things I really love to talk about on the podcast. And honestly, just enjoy talking with him about.
Yeah. So you actually just said something that I find this so cool is you hear so many people say, oh, they should have taught this in school. And that's the whole premise of your podcast is what are like, let's get rid of the fluff. Actually, what are the things that are crucial to know to lead whether it's happy, fulfilled, successful, however you define those things, life. After, however many episodes you've pumped out at this point, talking about finance, talking about sex, talking about, relationships, talking about all these different intricate things, what is either like, if there's one or like what some people call, what's your Mount Rushmore of topics that you believe should be taught in school after having the conversations?
It'd be easy to say personal finance, but I'm going to put a through line between every single one of my big categories and something that I see come up over and over again. And that's purpose. Like that is having purpose and intention with what you are trying to do with your life, with your money, with your relationship, with your health. If you give some thought to it, if you really decide where you want to be with it, you really get intentional with it. I find the most success comes from that kind of intentionality, that kind of preparation. That's why I go out and set some big goals for myself, because I know if I'm not very intentional with what I want to do with my year this year, then it's just got to fly by and it's got to turn over and over and over again. And then I'm looking back at the last 5 years and I'm like, what do I have to show for it? Same with my relationship. If you're punching it in every day and you're not stepping up and being really intentional, it's really hard. Same with your finances. Like you don't have to have the perfect plan, but if you have purpose and some kind of intention with what you want to do with your life, with your finances, you'll be successful. You'll figure it out. You'll find people along the way that can help you. You'll run into the solutions that you're looking for, and you'll hold yourself accountable. So I like I said, through line for all of it, if I just had like one thing that I feel like pops up, either underlie or on top, in every single one of my conversations, it's like, how are you intentional with this said topic or this said issue?
Yeah. So, and that's something I think inherently people know, right? Like a purposeful life is just necessary if you want to feel in your body. You want to feel like you're actually living as opposed to just alive. What's maybe one of the most surprising tips a guest has given you, or something you've learned, whether it's through books, listening to other podcasts, conversations, something that's really stuck with you that, revolves around purpose, whether it's, journaling, is it having these conversations to decipher what other people's purpose is and what lights them up? What's something that's like you didn't really expect to actually work as well as it does?
One of my favorites and why I love the craft of podcasting in general is having purpose with your questions and having real intention behind it. So I had a guest on, Larry Hagner. I think that's episode 57. Amazing guest, has a podcast called the Dad Edge Podcast for any dads out there that really want to bring purpose to being a father as well. But at the very end, he sneaks this really, really great thread in all about generative questions. And essentially I can explain it through an example. He would say very often, he would come home from work and he'd ask his kids, how was your day? And the response you're going to get back right away from that. It's good. It was fine. It was okay. You're going to get one word answers. That wasn't a very purposeful question. So he stumbled across generative questions, and I really loved it. And now instead of how was your day, it was, what was the best part of your day? That stops your kids in their tracks, and they got to reflect. They got to think back. Oh, gym class. I really liked gym class. We broke up and we played soccer. I was on the blue team, and it was, we had 5 minutes left. It was tied 2-2. And they just go into this whole monologue story of all of this. And you can tell they lit up because he asked a purposeful question, because he's trying to have purpose and intention with that relationship as well. He is not phoning it in. So I get really excited about having or asking purposeful questions too. It's rather than how was your weekend, it was the best part of your weekend. Like, it was a really easy reframe for me. So I liked it. I thought that worked really well for me. I enjoy it because I it usually lights people up whenever I get to go into my podcast mode with my friends and my family or things like that. So that's great. And then if I could share one other one too, you mentioned sex. So maybe you listened to Susan Bratton, that episode, which
Yep.
was phenomenal. And the big thing that I took away from there was not how can I last longer in bed? How can I make my girlfriend orgasm? All of these really whatever sex related things. It was actually the fact that sex was a learned skill. The fact that I never really thought that this topic was something that I could get better at, that it wasn't something that I had to be innately good at, because that's really how it came to me from the onset. And she really, out of all the guests that I had, the authors and the consultants and the speakers and all of these people, the one that taught me that anything is learnable was the sex expert, which was crazy to me. She really flipped me upside down on that, which is kind of cool. And now I look at that lens on anything, especially now being an entrepreneur as well. You got to approach so many situations as, I don't know how to do this yet. And, really taking it from a curiosity standpoint, or anything is kind of figure outable. So I don't know. Those would probably be the two things that I see pretty frequently in most of the episodes that I have.
Yeah. When I just real quick on that, what I find most often is it's the places you feel you can't improve that you need to look at closest to improve. So like for me, that actually for a long time was my finances. I did a lot of like deep shadow work, just kind of digging into like, what are my limiting beliefs around it? Came up with, as it usually is, some things that went down in my childhood that made me almost like fear having money, saving money, spending money, all of that. And so it's starting, at least from what I've seen leads to success for myself and the people I've had conversations with, starting with something so small and simple, it's unreasonable not to do it consistently. So I call it my daily cup of coffee. So I don't actually drink coffee. So every day I'll add into savings or investments or something that's not spending $2 to $5. So if I'm sitting pretty, $5. If I'm feeling a little scarce, $2. But as long as it's every single day, there's something going in. And now I'm to the point where there's now like weekly, monthly, quarterly kind of systems in place. It all started with $2. Anyone can save $2. And I just think, again, just it kind of goes back to what you were talking about of like, I don't know, but let's find out. So like let's find out, starting with the smallest, most basic thing. But one thing I want to go back to, because there's two aspects of what we've been talking about that I think tie together very well. So Jesse Itzler, again, a person I think we both are very excited about just watching live the human experience. He and his wife, Sarah Blakely, who are both insanely successful serial entrepreneurs. Well, I guess Sarah's more just with Spanx, but they talk about at the dinner table, both them and their kids answer the question, what did you fail at today? Now, I think that combines two things. The first one, it is that probing question, right? It's very purposeful because it gets them to consistently in that reticular activating system program the idea of, oh, I need to go out and try things on the edge of my limit so that I am failing, I'm learning, I'm growing in a healthy perspective that doesn't just like traumatize your kids.
Definitely.
I think the probing question ties with what are you going after? What are you going after that's so big that you're failing, so that you're not just always going for the low-hanging fruit? And I just think that's such a good way to look at it in terms of purpose is, what are you being purposeful about asking, and what are you being purposeful about doing? And if you're asking the right questions and taking the right steps, I think that leads to a dangerous combination for success.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I even like your what is your impossible? Like just challenging that at all perspectives and not necessarily having to overcome it at any point in time. But clearly you find it a lot in the ultra space too, about this whole overcoming your limiting beliefs and the fact that a lot of ultra runners started because they were just in your shoes. They were in my shoes, that they're like, I'm not a long distance runner. I could never do something like that. So rather than just let that be their impossible, they challenged it and they wanted to disprove that limiting belief. Same thing with the failing concept. I think if you're never pushing the boundary on something in your life, I don't know. That's just so wrapped up in purpose in general. Like I just don't, I couldn't see myself being really excited about life if there wasn't some area that I felt some sense of discomfort in, because I was really edging on, is this right for me or is this not? Like, it's kind of crazy, I think.
Yeah. So the whole Seek Discomfort, real quick, I want to give Ahmed a shout out. Seek
Dude,
Discomfort.
sick.
So he's the reason we're sitting down here today. There is intention in the shirt, even that. But no, I've always thought about, and this is obviously a huge generalization, but I think of people in two systems. There are what I call the cruising altitude people, who they kind of go through the life of like, and it doesn't have to be exactly this, but this is the image I play in my head of like, go to school, get the degree, get the secure job with the 401k, get your house. And then once you kind of have that set up, you almost hit that cruising altitude and you get into more of like a fixed lifestyle, fixed mindset. And then there's the rocket ship people, who it takes a while to design the ship and figure out, what's the right fuel and, who's the right crew. But once you figure that out, you just freaking blast off and you are through the stars and going on to bigger and better things. And inevitably, this podcast more or less is for the rocket ship people. But because it seems like when you're on the outside looking in, people like you who you went after doing the podcast, which I'm sure a lot of people don't know, it was 8 months between buying the microphone and doing the podcast. you have your own podcast, you're starting your own business, you're still working your 9 to 5, you have, you know, a lot of these things going on, and you are so all in on life, right? Were you always like that though, or was there a shift? And if there was it like a quick snap, wake up from hypnosis, or was it more of like a slow burn figuring it out?
Man, that's a tough question. I have always been, I would say, fairly growth minded. I've always been a big time goal setter. I've always had a lot of aspirations, and I've always been somebody that if I'm going to do something, I might as well go in all in on it. I think it took me a good period of life to get focused on the things that I really felt in the long term I was going to be really proud of, excited about, felt fulfilled from. Everybody goes through their teenage and college binge drinking phases, distractions in general, just this whole plethora of small learning opportunities. But I've always had a through line of excitement around personal development, around doing something that I felt like was something outside the norm. You know, people, I always wanted to be that person that like people look up to, that I was really challenging myself, that I was just going to do something a little bit different and follow whatever I really was excited about in life and not punch it in or not phone it in. I was always really afraid of getting into the cruising altitude state and always running away from that and going to the rocket ship aspect, but some way figuring out how I can do a little bit of both to an extent too. So I don't know. I think over time I have lined it up, and I think I will still continue to grow and improve in this area. There are still focuses in my life that, or areas of focus in my life that I want to improve on. Like friends, for example, is a really challenging one for me. Carrying so many different projects, it's sometimes I realize that I am saying no to friends, but I know in the long term that's got to be something that really does fill my cup up too. So by far, am I perfect? No. Like there are still so many areas that I want to improve in, but same time, like life is finite. Like why we got to waste this, man? Let's ring it
Yeah.
all out. Let's ring it all out.
Dude, I use that I think like 2 episodes ago, I did that exact same thing. And that's exactly how I view it. And that the question that I think I'll never find the answer to, but I would love to have the answer is like, what equation consists of the juice, right? Like, is it 40% family and 30%, business and 10% finance? There will never be an answer to that, but that's just how my brain works. I
I
do want to
wish.
switch gears because there is a concept that I genuinely believe is, if not the most important aspect of life, it's definitely up there. So there's a conversation in which you talk about that period of your life where you switch jobs, were almost instantly miserable, and you noticed that your girlfriend was absorbing the negative energy that you were giving out. This, to me, I call this energy transference. I believe every single thing, from who you're talking to, the books you're reading, the type of light that you're surrounding yourself with, every energy input and every energy output should be audited on a regular basis. So if you'd be willing to go there, and if you're not, that's totally fine, but if you could talk about kind of how you noticed that, like how did you pick up on the fact that there was not only this giving off of negative energy, but the absorption of it? And then what were some things you did to ensure that moving forward, you checked your energy and you made sure that you were checking the energy coming in?
I don't think I noticed it, to be honest. I think
Yeah.
this was my girlfriend. I think this is the true power of an amazing partnership. And we both go through phases where we might be absorbing from each other negative energy. And that is totally fine, because then we can absorb it so that they're not outputting that to anybody else. And sometimes it's just complaining. Sometimes you just need to vent. But that period was definitely a long period of negative energy and consistent disappointment. And I think she bit her tongue for a little while. I'm guessing probably up to a month before it was finally like, hey, Justin, you need to do something about this. And that took a little while still to sink in and to really actualize. And for me to be like, she's right. Like then you could replay the entire last 2 months and realize that the energy output that you were giving was not something that another version of you would want to be around. And I realized I needed to do something about it. And that was a really hard period for me. I would say that's probably one of the most challenging periods of my 20s so far, was that period. And I needed to make some changes. So I did make some changes. And I didn't, as you probably heard in that story, I didn't necessarily make the right changes from the get-go, but I was making forward momentum. And I've realized from that moment and from that experience, that is the most important aspect of all of this. If you are not excited about something, if you feel like you are not in the right place, start working towards a different direction then. And you might have to double back and turn around and go a different direction because you realized it wasn't where you were going, but you knew that that place and time was not necessarily anywhere that you wanted to stay at all. So it was definitely a challenging period. Tons of learning lessons from there. That is probably the 6-month period that I think about a whole lot around my 20s. But yeah, I bless my girlfriend for taking it on for a little while and just absorbing and realizing, or, acting, okay, this might be temporary and he just needs this right now. But then having the intuition and the confidence to turn it around in a very useful way to me, and not necessarily a defensive way, but just saying and giving me a gentle reminder of all of these things that I say that I now need to practice. And that was definitely a huge moving stone for me.
Yeah. Well, and that is so important, right? Obviously, your significant other, but also as someone who's as single as one can be, I can also attest, like, having the right friends around too, because that is something I truly believe, me and kind of my core group, if someone needs to be called out on something like that, we're able to do that in a way that doesn't come off, malicious or egoic. It's very much from a place of love and empathy and understanding of who that person is and their potential, and knowing that they want to get as close to that optimal potential. But I think that's huge. And then the other thing that I want to dive into, because we were talking about this before we hit record, is you were talking about, you started making changes. Some of them weren't the right changes. Maybe you had to kind of get rid of some of those things. And I was talking about this in, the New Year's episode, which is addition by subtraction. And really, I think New Year's is just the ideal time. I feel like New Year's and your birthday are the two times to really go deep.
I agree. I'm not a fan of the New Year's haters, like the New Year's resolution haters out there. I think it's a great clean slate to set some intention for the year. And I mean, so be it. I get it. Like, Quitter's Day is coming up here, January 19th. And the majority of, I don't know if you've seen that study, but like 80% of people will abandon their New Year's resolutions by January 19th. And they've deemed that now Quitter's Day. Yes, right. Quitter's Day. There's a bunch of studies that were done on this, and there's a lot out there on it. And I'm really passionate about it and making sure that anyone that listens to my show is going to overcome Quitter's Day. Because, I think there is so much beauty in setting out intention and wanting to achieve a goal. But the real fulfillment and purpose comes from actually seeing it through. Like, it was very, from the 100K, it was very, very freaking cool at the end of that to now be able to say, I did that. And I want other people to have the same opportunity to do so, and not continue to let their New Year's resolutions be these flighty ideas that continue to resurface once a year for 3 weeks and then they're gone again. I'm not okay with that, but I am okay with the opportunity for everybody to have a reminder on their calendar to reset those intentions and to go get after it.
Dude, Quitter's Day. I gotta keep that in mind. If anyone's listening, Don't you freaking quit on the 19th.
Yes.
That would be a slap to both of our faces if you quit at this point. Um, no, and okay, so particularly what you were saying about the 100K, this is something I'm so passionate about is there is no fulfillment in the excitement of starting. There's none. It's exciting, it's new, it's fun, but there's no fulfillment from that. The fulfillment comes after the crux. It comes after the dark parts. It comes after this, like the self-talk that's telling you, oh, you're going to quit. Oh, you can't do it. Oh, and overcoming that and really proving to yourself what you're capable of, despite adversity, despite challenge, despite all those things. And I think obviously ultra is just such a like easy way to do that because it's
Yeah.
physical and you can tangibly feel having to battle through all of the things that come with, you know, 100K, basically everything in the ultra space. But I think that's true for everything. And in terms of goal setting, like you said, I don't discredit New Year's. The people who say setting goals on New Year's is a waste of time, the whole 80%, it's like,
I get it.
it's really not. You still want to leverage the energy that comes with a societal shift like that and leverage that momentum, but still having that healthy respect for like life is still on a continuum, and you know it's not just gonna like all your problems will disappear. You still have to take action and like solve that stuff. But no, I love that idea of fulfillment and making sure that you are, you know, staying with your eye ahead on, if you really want out of this what you said you did, you have to switch from interested to committed at a certain point.
Mm-hmm. Well, and at the end of the day, too, if that number is 80% of people abandon their goals, we didn't look at the inverse of that. That means 20% of people are continuing to move forward with their goals. So if New Year's resolutions gave 20% of people the opportunity to set an intention on what they wanted to do with their life that year, and 20% of people continued to do whatever they set out their intention to do with because of this change of calendar, I'm freaking for that. The other 80%, whatever, we'll leave you guys behind. But the other 20%, let's go, man. Like we got a group.
Yeah, dude. And the other part of that too, though, is how many of those 80% just kind of willy-nilly write down some things and then don't really look at it again.
Yeah.
I think to far surpass a large amount of that 80%, it is just being intentional and aware enough to, you know, question the goals you have, question why do you want what you say you want. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I've found over the past few years of doing that is I think oftentimes when you initially write things down, a lot of it is going to come from ego. And so if you're willing to kind of check that and really go up against yourself and why you want what you want, you'll find that if you can just go a layer deeper from the ego to, okay, why does the ego want that? What does the ego want out of it? Then you get to the more intuitive goals and things that you're going after. And I mean, there are a whole bunch of systems and a deep rabbit hole that I go down when it comes to kind of doing that. But
Do you have something that comes to mind on that too? Because I'm very excited about systems around goals as well. This is something I've been thinking about here the last couple of weeks, of course, with the new year turning.
yeah, let's get into it. So essentially the way that it's almost like when you search something, let's say you go to shop for a shirt on an online store. If you just go on the main page, you'll see purses and belts and watches and all these things, but there's filters: men's, large, red, crew neck, all of these filters, right? So I put the filters of what is external reality and internal reality. External reality, I break it up into the categories of career, finance, relationships, hobbies, spirituality, charity or contribution, kind of those external, like the wheel of life, right? Those external pieces of the puzzle. But then internally, you have Tony Robbins' 6 fundamental human needs. So security, variety, love and connection, significance, growth, and contribution. So for me, I write down on totally separate lists, what do I want not even just in the next year, but like grand master plan. What do I want ideally in every area of life? And then I reverse engineer it to, okay, if I want to impact 1 million people by the end of my life, well, reverse engineering, okay, by the time I'm 30, what does that look like? Okay, so if I know that, now let's break that down into, okay, now I have a more accurate understanding of in the next year, in order to move that dial the proper amount and get that momentum, now what does that look like? So once I fill that out and reverse engineer it in the external reality, now I can bring in the second filter, which is the internal, like which of these will allow me to get a 10 out of 10 for variety? Oh, well, for hobbies, I put big wall climb of over 1,000 feet, run a 100-mile race, go to, a different country, all of these things that will inevitably create variety. Cool. I can just check that off. I don't have to now create a whole other list for variety. Love and connection. What am I going to do? The goal is to get 100 people involved in each event for Project Ultra. I'm assuming I will connect with a good amount of those people, and having the ability to what Gary Vee calls the gift of gab. I truly believe I have that gift, for better or for worse, for the people around me. And so those external ideals and the next year's pursuit moving towards them funnel through the internal fulfillment gauges, if you will. And then from there, I break down. So I've got all of the things for the year. Then I question, does my ego want this or does my intuition want this? And really that comes down to like whether you call it intuition, whether you call it, a gut feeling, whether you call it psychic, whatever you want to call it, there is that undeniable knowing that if you say, why do I want that thing? You'll know. You may not want to listen to it, but you'll know. And so I've really allowed like that voice that is your conscience that sometimes whispers really quietly. I have given that my full attention. And so when I ask these, I get that response, whether it's a whisper or a scream in my ear response. I'll cross the things off that have to do with ego, or I'll go that step deeper. And then from there, it's back to the reverse engineering process one more time. So now for 2023, I not only have my yearly goals, but I have quarterly requirements, monthly, weekly, and daily. And so now there are really those consistent automatic systems in place, like the daily cup of coffee for savings, like daily meditation and breath work, like daily, I don't get out of bed until I think of things that I'm grateful and excited for that day. They're tiny little things that take seconds, but they're so unreasonably easy that like there's no reason not to do them. So that's the long-winded format of kind of how I go about setting up. So there's the addition by subtraction. That to me is the addition by addition. What am I adding onto my plate in a way that goes after my ideal life, but doesn't just completely blow up my current lifestyle?
Yeah, a bunch of things, honestly, there. First, systems is important. Defining the goal or setting the goal is important, but if you don't create the system that will support the goal, it's got to fail. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, has a really good analogy with the rudders and the oars. Have you heard him speak on this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love it so much. And essentially, you got a boat and you got a rudder. The rudder gives you the direction. This is your goal. It points you. But setting the rudder has got to get you nowhere, and unless you got some kind of motorized propeller behind there. But assuming that there's not that case, you have the oars too. The oars are the systems, the things that are actually going to get you to the endpoints of all of this. So without one or the other, I mean, you could have oars and you could just be rowing anywhere, but not necessarily know where you're going. You could have a rudder pointed somewhere, but not making any progress whatsoever with what you actually want to do here. So I use that as a framework more times than not. I love lots of different goal setting techniques and frameworks and reflective questions. But at the end of the day, after that day is done and settled, you got to start acting on some of these things too. And I think one thing that you do great in all of your goals is you set some kind of minimum daily activity and you make that minimum daily activity sustainable. And this is really important, I think, in so many different goals that you have momentum towards your goals every single day. And the amount of that momentum seems so silly that you have to do it. Like that's currently what I'm trying to accomplish with my 2 miles a day. At this point in time, that might seem astronomical to some people to run 2 miles a day, but it's almost like brushing my teeth. Like I got to get up the motivation to spend 15 minutes to go do it every single day. But I love flexing and challenging that muscle that does that. And it actually sets the tone for so many other daily activities that I've set for myself that correlate to so many other goals in the long run as well. So that's great. And the last thing that I would have someone consider in all of this framework as well too is just goal competition in general. That if you set way too many goals, once again, you might have 4 or 5 boats all of a sudden, and the rudder might be all set to the right place. But for you to row all 5 of those boats every single day is a whole lot of work. And that's you get to make that decision, honestly. Maybe you do want to make forward progress on all of those, and you are okay with making just a little bit of movement in each one of those boats every single day. I like that too. There are so many things that I'm trying to accomplish with my day every single day. But every once in a while, it might be worth just hopping in one boat and only rowing that one boat for a long period of time. And you will get to that point too. I know with your training with the 100 miler, with your training with Project Ultra in general too. I mean, that final month of preparation for me prior to that, like it felt like all hands on deck where I was just dropping anything and everything. Friday nights out with friends quickly became Friday night with myself, unless you wanted to come run with me, then cool. But I was spending my Friday nights going on, 10, 15-mile runs instead, because I just needed the time in order to make sure that I was accomplishing the system I set up for myself to be successful into the ultimate goal.
Yeah. There's one last piece to this that I find very powerful. I don't yet have an answer on how to get to this point, but I'll tell a story and then I'll follow up with it. So at the gym that I work at, we were unloading. We just expanded. So we had cement floor. A company came, pulled up, I don't even know how much rubber flooring. And it was me and 3 other guys. And so we were working kind of as a team to move this stuff. And one of them made the comment, "Oh man, how bad would that suck to have to move this all by yourself? Like, how long would that take? That would be awful, blah, blah, blah." And one of them said, like, "Oh, well, like, I wonder how long it would be until you quit." And then, like, in my head, there's switches. I call them switches in your head that you almost find the ability to flip the switch. And one of them that I've found, I don't know exactly when or where or how, but to me, I'm at the point now where it's like, you just don't make quitting an option. And as soon as quitting is no longer an option, you don't have to waste time thinking about wanting to quit or having to quit or how bad it hurts, because you're not going to quit. So once that's off the table, okay, great. We can go as slow as we want. We can take a break if we really need to, but we're not going to freaking quit. And I really do believe if one can adopt that mindset, not just in a singular thing, but over a long period of time as it pertains to these goals or these systems, that's where you become really, really powerful in the pursuit, is when you take quitting just completely off the table. Because now I think it wastes so much mental energy every few minutes going back to like, oh, this is getting really difficult. What if I just stopped? Well, that's not an option. So now how are you going to figure it out?
Yeah, man, you're gonna flex that muscle here at your 100 miler. Are you what's your thought process right now? Was the 100 miler, are you hoping to get out some sense of pretty much bashing out all of this essence of quitting? Because honestly, just through my 100K, watching Mason recently go through his 100 miler as well, even the best athletes are going to sit there and think about it for quite a while throughout a race. Like it is like eternally on your mind for the, I mean, for me, it was like the whole last half of the 100K. It was a frequent, but then it was just smaller and smaller lies to yourself every single time. It was like, all right, we're going to finish this lap. Then we can rethink about that. Then it was like, we can get to the next aid station. Then we'll think about it. Then it's like, we'll get over that hill and then we'll reconsider this. Like, it was just like a consistent lie to myself that like, no, shove that thought down. Like we can address it further down the road here.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, what I'm actually trying to get out of it is multifaceted, only because I have like, what do I want out of it as an athlete? What do I want out of it as a amateur philanthropist, we'll call it? What do I want out of it just in terms of a community gathering? So specifically the running of 100 miles, we'll talk about that. What I want out of it really is just to be very present the whole time. I know that, and I know this not just through the ultra space, but like when I do road trips, when I'm playing up a first date in my head, there are so many different things in which you build up this grandiose expectation of what you should learn from it, what you should get out of it. And so for me, almost every time it hasn't been what I've expected. And I've lost some of the beauty of the experience in the expectation of the experience, as opposed to just knowing that I'm showing up, having done the work, having prepared, having set the intentions of, let's just go after this as hard as we can, and then just be very present. So when the highs are high, just be present, enjoy it, be grateful for it. When the lows are low, be present, be grateful for it, which it's a lot of people have called me masochistic because I can be grateful in very low lows. But at the end of the day, and it's the only tattoo I have, and it's because to me, gratitude is baseline. Like the fact that you're here, you get a chance to experience the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, the joy, the pain, all of it. You don't get that if you're not here. And there are a lot of people, unfortunately, every single day who don't even get to wake up and get out of bed. So that all goes back to, that I don't get to get out of bed until I express gratitude. And so that's really my hope for the physical experience, if you will, is really to not let myself get too far ahead of where I'm at mentally and start thinking about like, now I've got 60 miles left. Now I've got 40 miles left. It's like, no. We're at where we're at. We're feeling how we're feeling. Again, it is a community event. So there are like 5 time slots that people will be showing up and joining me for parts of it. Cool. And I'm so excited to share that experience with people, especially for people to see what this looks like in the later miles. So I think my intention is just to be present and not show up with so many expectations of what the experience holds.
That's cool. Yeah, I really like that thought, man.
Yeah, it's but now if we're talking as a facilitator, I have a lot of expectations because now it all started as I just asked the park if they'd be willing to stay open overnight so I could run. And through me exposing a lot of information about what we're trying to do, it turned into sanctioned event, fully insured, liability waivers, EMS, all the stuff. And so as a facilitator, I mean, I'm 25. It's not like I have decades of experience putting on big events. Every single aspect of this, I have never done before. I've never run 100 miles. I have never put on a facilitated event. And so it's this really exciting stress to have such a crazy fast learning curve, because that's something I feel like as a kid, you're always learning at such an accelerated rate.
Yeah.
And I can speak for myself. I feel like there have been times in my life where I've still learned new things, but at a much lower and much less exciting rate. And so now to just be bombarded with all of these new lessons and mentors and coaches and connections and all of this stuff. It's so exciting. At least to me, the stress test is exciting, and just the rate at which I'm leveling up, knowing that I want to do things like this for the rest of my life, at least as it stands right now. We'll see how it, plays out. But yeah, it's such a cool experience. And it's awesome to be able to take something that inherently is selfish, like running 100 miles. You have your crew, you're, like you said, like you're telling friends to, hold up for a couple months because I'm just going to be running, lifting, eating, or sleeping for a couple months here. It's a selfish endeavor, and I fully acknowledge that. I think there's a lot of benefit to being selfish every once in a while, but taking something inherently selfish and making it as selfless as I can through making it a community event that puts a silver lining on a tragic thing that happened in Waukesha in a way that supports a very worthy cause.
And you say selfish too, but honestly, just doing things like this and showing up and challenging the version of your current self so that you can continue to be the best version of yourself moving forward. If everybody was selfish like that and lived that through, this world would be a whole lot better, man. So I don't think it is that much of a selfish pursuit. And I promise you, I don't think anybody is going to want to be in your shoes whenever they see you coming around on some of those final laps, man. Like, it is got to be a show. And I think it's going to be super inspiring through that as well. I mean, regardless, like it just with Mason and watching him go through his whole experience, who I know who was a recent guest on your show, but that really lit me up, man. Like that was so freaking cool to see him and be with him the entire time to watch the whole transformation. And that jazzed me up and got me really excited about a whole lot of things in my life. So regardless if that was just Mason wanting to do it for his own selfish reason or to challenge his own self, the byproduct of that was him inspiring me to want to go out and do something to really challenge myself and to go into a different place. So there's nothing selfish about going out and running 100 miles.
Yeah,
no aspect of that, man.
And I use the word selfish with, I think I just have a different relationship with the word selfish than a lot of people. A lot of people think of selfish just as bad. Sure. I think of a lot of selfish acts as very healthy things. Taking time for yourself to exercise, to meditate, to journal, to go after these pursuits that hopefully will inspire other people. There is selfish aspects within the motivation to do said things, but as a I guess quote unquote motivational speaker, this is great ammo. Like, I'm going to go through the thick of it, knowing that there will be a lot of powerful lessons that I learn about persistence, about grit, about having the right people around you. As a podcaster, it'll give me some fun, crazy things to talk about with guests and relate to more people. So when I say selfish, I hope I can relay how I view it to people.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you ever do this. When I'm in the car, I will have full on conversations with myself.
Yeah, for sure.
Where not too long ago, I was talking about, I'm like, man, being selfless can be one of the most selfish things because it makes you feel so good. And being selfish can be one of the most selfless things because you can do so much good for others. I'm like, this is so paradoxical. And so I'm driving to work, having this conversation, and I just feel my brain melting as I'm trying to unravel this whole, flip the script on these selfish, selfless words. But yeah, there's my little tidbit on that.
Can I turn one of your questions around on you too? I'm kind of curious.
For sure.
What you kind of looked at the timeline of my history and when I turned it on and when things changed, what the demarcation line was for you or for me. What was it for you? Was there a period of your life where, let's just call it personal development, entered your life and you felt like you really took a different direction because of that?
Oh yeah, I was a very different person going down a very different path. So Getting out of high school, I just felt, and I didn't realize what it was at the time. I couldn't put words to it. I just knew I felt off, but I was very misaligned because in my heart of hearts, I knew I didn't I didn't feel called to go to college. I knew that I wanted to go out into the world, get my hands dirty, learn through experience that way. But college is what you should do. And so I went to school. I was in a very unhealthy relationship at the time and a pretty long-term one, a few years, to no discredit of her at all. Amazing human being, but not very amazing relationship for a lot of reasons, just poor communication and a whole bunch of things. Um, and so I escaped through getting drunk, getting high, partying, all of these ways to just get out of being Trevor and, accepting the reality that was my life. And that led to just a very dark place where was doing things that didn't feel like me. I'd look in the mirror and just think like that's not who I want to be, but I wasn't doing anything about it. I would just be like, all right, well, that's not who I want to be. So let's go smoke some weed and
Yeah.
forget about it. And that's not to say, I think there are pros to having a casual drink with friends. I think there are pros to, CBD and the benefits of things like that. But in the way I was using it, heavy con. And so it was kind of a mix of like I just hit this very low point that I think of it as I see a lot of people hit this where I got so low that I truly believe at the point that I got to, it was either I was going to run myself into the ground and just not be alive anymore, or this is my wake up call to like shape up and start taking action. And so I just went all in on, I started reading books. I started picking the brains of people who I looked at and wanted to emulate even just one aspect of them and their life. Started working out. I worked out in the terms of like, I hit bench press and chugged pre-workout. But like really getting to know my body and learning the different disciplines around exercise and just really sitting with myself and not allowing myself to escape so that I could just sit and be present with the things that boiled up when I wasn't distracted by my phone or alcohol or a conversation. I was just there. And all of this was kind of happening. So like 2015, probably to 2017 or 2018, there was a few years of just, like you said, I was making changes. A lot of them weren't the right changes. And slowly but surely, I started piecing things together. And I remember back in 2018, there was because I was journaling at this point, and I wrote something along the lines of like, I see health and fitness as a way to really make a positive impact on the world. And there was something about that. I took a picture of it and just saved it in my phone. And now 5 years later, I'm working as a personal trainer. I'm working with people in behavior change. I'm doing workshops for people on high performance and hosting a podcast all about self-development. And so I think of it as like I went through that mess to have the message for the other people who are in it. Because there are a lot of people who, and I used to be so annoyed with these people who always seemed like they just had it figured out. Like they always were happy and healthy and exercising and doing all the right things. And I would look at them like, because in my head, I knew how much I was struggling and how
Yeah.
misaligned I was. And yeah, so that was it. I think emotionally I've blocked probably a lot of it out. So it's hard to really clearly piece together what the defining moment was. But the kind of reason for how deep my gratitude for life goes is I was on a road trip and I was being an idiot as one is in their 20s, and I got myself in a really bad position on the edge of a cliff where I was sliding down some gravel, and I was about 10-ish feet away from sliding off a 90-foot cliff, and I
Mm.
just happened to slide into a bush. And if that bush wasn't there, there was no physical way for me to stop myself from sliding. So at the end of that day, I went back to I don't know if I was in a hotel room or a campsite, but I laid down and I was like, holy crap, I shouldn't even be here right now. And I think when someone experiences, like, really put it up to their face, like, a bush is the reason you're still alive. There is a depth that comes with that. And so, like, I really, when I take things seriously, it's because I choose to take things seriously, and I want to enjoy the depth that comes from them. But anyone who knows me and sees me interact on a day-to-day basis knows I'm not taking things seriously. I'm here to have fun. I'm here to connect. I'm here to bring light energy and good vibes and just like hang out and get to know people. And it's because I know that as safe as one can feel, it can be done in an instant from something so out of your control. And so might as well do the best you can and make the most of what you got.
So wait, were you on like a motorcycle or something?
No, I was rock climbing. I was free soloing, which is climbing with no safety gear.
Yeah. I'm a climber
And
too. I didn't know that you climbed. That's sick,
yeah,
man.
very amateurly. I am not I'm not Alex Honnold. I'm not going to make a free solo documentary, but essentially there was a waterfall that I wanted to see up close, and it was being blocked by a river, and at the edge of the river was a cliff face, and it had kind of like an angled wall here, and then a wall flush against the river, and then another angled wall. So me being me, I was like, oh, I can just climb up, crawl over, climb down, bada bing, bada boom, we're there. Don't have to worry about it. So I climbed up, and then at the top was that really steep edge of gravel. But when I got up there, there were little trees and bushes and things. So I'm thinking I can just frogger my way through this, no problem. And I drastically underestimated the distance. And so, yeah, I went to grab a tree and I slipped and started kind of like sliding. And yeah, there was
That's
no way I
panic.
was getting control.
Oh God. What a good story though, man. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, don't do that. Anyone who's listening, this is not, don't try this at home, kids. But yeah, I really do. I was talking to my roommate maybe a couple months ago at this point, but that's something I can very much hang my hat on. Is I think I got all of the stupid stuff out of the way early, and I got those questions answered early, which opens up the door now for me not to need to sow any wild oats or go crazy doing a whole bunch of things, because I've done all the crazy things, and I know that's just not, it doesn't lead to fulfillment. You know, if you're drinking, you probably feel like garbage the next day, and you're probably getting Taco Bell for midnight dinner that night, which also, and so there's just this cascade around it. And a big part of that goes back to that energy audit. I took an audit of the people, the activities, the materials that I was consuming and surrounding myself with. And unfortunately, the vast majority of it was very negative.
Hmm. Yeah, I think if you do that alone, that will vastly improve your life. I mean, whatever your social platform of choice is, go through all those followers, and anybody that you're consistently seeing that does not add some kind of positivity or smile to your face, just unfollow them. Like, I mean, looking through all my followers now, and the people that I follow, it is the Tom Billies, the Jesse Itzlers of the world, and they're out doing some crazy stuff. And I see that, and I'm like, screw this. I'm swiping up and I'm getting out of this app, and I want to go do that too. Like, that's so cool. So I think doing that, and I mean, there's hard parts too. Friends is one of the more challenging ones, I think, especially long-term friends. I have one in particular I'm thinking about right now who can be really negative. And if I spend a long period of time with them, I find myself absorbing some of that negativity and also being negative. And I'm still honestly struggling with trying to figure out what place that person has in my life at large too, because I do have many memories with this person and many happy memories, but it's probably a Justin that I wouldn't necessarily want to be anymore either. And we've just grown apart. And so there are challenges to it, but I think you can purge 90% of that pretty easily by what are you reading and consuming? Maybe you need to insert something else into your life because of that. I mean, I love self-development, all the books on that. And I really just try to not watch any news or read any news in that sense. The people that I follow on the social media platforms, the people that I get to hang out with every single day, like yourself, are always bringing me joy and excitement, which is great. So I don't know. It's a challenge, but I think doing that and spending today while you're listening to this, finish the episode, but at the end of this, just go through and start making some of those changes. And I think you'll be surprised how drastically different that you feel.
Drop that freaking mic. All right. So I have two last questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
These are two questions that I just love asking people on or off camera. The first one, if I hooked up your microphone to a little earpiece, let's just say everyone magically knows English now, and I said, you can share one message with the world. Everyone will hear it. We'll say even like dogs, cats, animals, fungi, everything hears it. What's a message that you believe to be universally true that you think people need to hear right now?
I think stealing from you, just saying life is infinite and go make the most of it. Like, why don't wait around for the things that you want? Start acting on the things that you want right now. Make bold choices in your life. Bring more excitement and energy to the things that you enjoy. Like, if you're looking around and you're like, man, I wish my life was more exciting. That's a you problem. That's you, man. Like, you don't need more exciting people around you. You need to be the more exciting person, and you will attract those kind of people. So yeah, make your hit list, make your bucket list, start crossing some of those things out, make some forward progress, get rid of the things that you don't want, that aren't bringing you value, that don't bring you excitement, that you're disappointed that you continue to do. Add more into your life that makes you really proud, that you feel accomplished after you did said thing. And I think you can drastically change your life and make the most of it.
Dude, that was a phenomenal message. I just love that. Like, it's a you problem.
It is a you problem. Like, and
is.
once you figure that out, like, you realize like that everybody is playing in their own first player, and people do have vested interest in some of the third players in their own games. But at the end of the day, like, you are the one that is making the calls and, pressing the controller and doing the certain things here. So if you aren't excited about your own life, if you feel like there isn't something around you, putting aside all of the disparities because of the color of your skin, the socioeconomic, what you were born into, the grandparents or the parents that raised you, etc. Put all that aside, control the controllables. Like, if you're not excited about what's going on in your life right now, I think you really need to turn it around and look at yourself, because I have found all of the people that I really look up to are taking control of their own life. They are deciding what they want to do. They are putting some sense of purpose and fulfillment into the intentions that they're setting aside every single day and making the most of it.
Yeah. What a phenomenal message, dude. And like, it is so true. Oh man, I think it was Joe Rogan I just heard say this. He said, if there was a documentary being made about you and there was a camera crew following you around all the time, would you feel good about what that documentary is going to say? Fortunately, I'm in a position where I would love to have a free crew follow me around, so I wouldn't have to be amateurly filming all these weird clips. But I think that's so powerful, is just really take into consideration that, like, as selfless, selfish, whatever you want to say, like, you are living for you because you're living as you, and really making the most of that. So I love that. Now, the last question is just for you. So for you right now in your life, what is the next step in you becoming your best self?
Something I'm focused on most, or what's bringing most of my attention right now, is entrepreneurship. It's something I'm really excited about. It's popping me out of bed every day. I'm beating my alarm clock up every single day because I'm excited to spend a couple of hours before I have to log on to the 9 to 5 to work on some business projects. I'm excited for the end of the day so I can jump back into some things that are happening here. So I think continuing to lean into that, knowing that it is bringing me a lot of joy and fulfillment, is something that I will continue to make sure is more and more relevant to my life right now. And I think in the long run, it is making me a better version of myself.
Heck yeah, man. You are in the pursuit and I love to see it. What a phenomenal episode. There were so many, like, for anyone who listened to this, I don't always say this, and you know that. So if you hear me saying this, it's true. This is one I genuinely recommend. If you didn't do this the first time, go back, get a notepad, and take some notes, because no matter who you are, no matter where you're at, no matter how you're feeling, there are so many gold nuggets in this conversation that are worth writing down, implementing, and systematizing. So, Justin, thank you, man. This was an honor to have you on here.
Dude, likewise, man. I appreciate you inviting me on, and I love our conversation. And honestly, hopefully we get to have more of these kind of conversations.
Oh, we will. I want to see if I can get you and Mason on here for a throwdown between the three of us. But
That would be so much fun. We should totally make that happen. And then maybe after you hit your 100 miler too, we should do a recap on The Struggle Is Real.
heck yeah, I may not be able to walk, but I'll be able to talk. So, all right, man. And for everybody listening, again, one last time, if you've gotten to this point, thank you so much. It is amazing whether one person or 100 people or a million people for some reason watch this. It's so great knowing that you are taking the time out to better yourself, be more intentional with your life. If you want more resources, the Struggle Is Real podcast, definitely check it out. I don't say that unless I mean it. I have no reason to. Truly, it is a phenomenal podcast. The range of guests is so great. No matter, like, for me, I'm single. I'm not very into dating unless it kind of falls into my lap. But there's a podcast about sex that is very educational, and it kind of just breaks and rips through the taboo. There's financial literacy, there's healthy relationships, there's so many different areas to cover. And so it is well worth the visit checking it out. So take a look at that. Justin, thank you for being a guest. And everybody, thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time. Peace.